Welcome to Here's What I Learned. I'm your host, Jackie Hayes. I'm Assistant Strategist and Operations Support Specialist. My guests and I share the lessons we've learned about making value-based decisions, leading our teams in new ways, and rejecting traditional business advice when that advice doesn't align with the life we want to live. If you're a solopreneur or small business owner tired of the same old way of doing business, then you'll want to stick around and take a listen. So put in those earbuds, get your morning mile started, and enjoy the episode. Today's guest is Bridget Baker. Bridget's superpower is giving her clients the permission they need to brand their business the way they want to. Building brands and websites is the place where she combines all her skills and helps people let go of the cluttered ideas about their brands and create the space for something they love. If Bridget were to appear on America's Got Talent, she says she would showcase her ability to organize a cabinet. Take a listen to the episode. Hi, Bridget. Welcome to Here's What I Learned. Can you tell everybody what it means to you to do business your way?
Ooh, start out with a tough question there. That's what I love about you. Doing business my way. I think we're constantly fed the ways you should be doing it. And I am not a rebel. I am an upholder. I'm very okay, I should do it that way. And you realize that way doesn't really work for you. And so I've had to, over time, some people like me have to manually give themselves permission to do it the way that works for them. So even me, right, for an example, like having these very structured rules around, I can only work at my office and I shouldn't work in bed, or this is bad, that's bad, this is good, And last night I was working on a project and I'm like, it's okay that I'm staying up till 11 because I'm on my couch, I'm comfortable. This is what works for me right now. And having to go, this is okay right now versus this isn't how I should be living my life, So I think that's what it is giving yourself permission to have that flexibility, because isn't that why we all got into business for ourselves anyway? I found myself having a 9 to 5 for myself, and that was weird. So yeah.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking the same thing, that like when we were all working for corporate or wherever it was we were working, that was the traditional 9 to 5, if we ever did. Not everybody did. That we're like, oh, I just hate being told what my hours are and blah, 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 blah. And then we go into business for ourselves and we establish the exact same rules that we hated so much when we were in corporate. So it is really quite ridiculous that we do that.
Yeah, it was, and then even I had told a client I started working on Sundays, and she goes, well, that takes the Monday scaries away. And I thought, you know what? I didn't even think about that, because Sunday, it's like sort of this almost found time day, because I have worked in fairly non-traditional settings before. I rarely worked in 9 to 5 jobs. And it was like, oh, I'm not going to get a lot of emails. Not a lot of people are going to contact me on Sunday. It's like my brain can really focus on something creatively. So I've just leaned into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have found the same thing, that sometimes on the weekends is a great time for me to do like batching content or batch editing podcasts where I just need a lot of uninterrupted time. And because with client work, you have the same thing where there's Zoom meetings or there's back and forth emails. And so you don't have uninterrupted time during the work week, because we all still seem to follow the work week plan. So
exactly. Yeah. Because it's that working on your business versus, what is it? Working on your business, working in your business, however it goes. That's task switching, that constant toggling back and forth. I would find myself, okay, how do so instead, like taking the time on Sunday, like I'm just going to work on this thing on Sunday. I'm not going to toggle back and forth. I'm not going to go from client to client. I'm going to focus on one thing that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that, being more open with my schedule of being like, well, here's the deadline that, it's say the deadline is next Tuesday. That doesn't mean I have to have it finished by Friday. If Friday is a beautiful day outside, I can go outside and spend the day outside and then do the work on Saturday or Sunday. Or if I'm not feeling well on Thursday, if I reschedule my Zoom calls or whatever I need to do, and I can rest and take that day off and do the work later, as long as I'm meeting the deadlines and needs of my clients. So
yeah, it's flexible boundaries. So it's still because it's easy to just, then that turns into working all the time, right? And my husband and I used to have a saying. So we lived in a travel trailer for 5 years, and that was like part of I was working from home, and I thought I built this business so I could live and work anywhere. And I haven't lived and worked anywhere. I'm just basically in the same place. So we took it on the road, and living in a travel trailer was great to do my work from. But we had this saying that was like my weekends when I say it does. So like we oftentimes, because there'd be less people on a hike or something, we'd go on a hike on a Monday because there'd be less people there. And there's sort of this, if you are able to create that life that's flexible, why not lean into that?
Yeah. Yeah, like going camping. Why am I waiting on the weekend where everybody else is there? Why am I not going
Mhm.
on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday instead?
Exactly. And the businesses, local businesses are happy to have you there. They're like, "Yay, we wish we had more people here on a Wednesday. This is great." So you're supporting local economies and things like that.
So tell me about this living on the road. I think a lot of us, when we start our businesses, especially if they're online businesses and not brick and mortar, are like, oh, now I can be location independent. And again, a lot of us don't ever actually do anything with that. So what was that decision process like? What was the inspiration for that? What were some downfalls? Just anything you want to share.
So many things. Well, it was funny. I was living in Los Angeles with my husband. We had just gotten married in 2012 and had a great life. I had like three different jobs. Like, so I was building my business. I started my business in about 2008. So I had that plus other jobs I did and things to get things going in life. I was very busy, but we had a very great social life, great group of friends, all these things. And my husband, like the day after we get married or something, he goes, I want to travel. I'm like, okay, like a trip? He's like, no, like full time. I'm like, what? Leave all our friends, like why? What? I didn't understand, because he like was like, all right, what's our next step? And part of the next step was we'd both been married before. He already had a kid that was a teenager. We knew we weren't going to have children. We weren't going to buy a house. It was like, what's the next step of our relationship? And so his was like, great, full-time travel. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I was very resistant at first. I was really grumpy about it. I was like, I like community too much. I don't want to do this. But then I remembered that I have friends all over the place, all over the country. And somehow this conversation started out about remodeling Airstreams, or it just kind of started in this fluid way. And again, I still was very like got into this. I get into the practical too easily. I was like, well, what about mail? What about jury duty? What, all the things that are figure outable. And I can also help people figure those out if they want to. But essentially I kind of he thought that was a hard no. And I was like, no, that's me leaning into, well, just how do we do it? I'm willing. And so we had gone away for a weekend, and on the weekend he was like, yeah, well, so you don't want to do that. Like, what he was really just kind of apathetic. Like, I don't think you want to do anything that's making me sad. And I was like, you got it wrong. So we had a conversation about it, and we shook hands, which I don't think we've ever done. We shook hands on it like we were making a deal. Like, all right, we're going to declare this thing. We're going to call it Independence Day. And when we've like saved enough money and we've gotten ourselves in a certain position, we're going to get a trailer. We're going to go on the road, do this whole thing. So that was how we decided to do it, because it was like, why go far when I've got friends here? It's like untapped places I haven't even seen, little small towns and things like that. And so also part of it was we knew we were kind of done with Los Angeles. We'd both lived there a long time. We were ready to move and didn't know where. And so we mostly trekked Western United States. And the technology has changed over time now. There was no Starlink or whatever, which there is now. So it was really, internet was a real challenge and a real practical problem of, well, great, just get the hotspot, and great, just do this. And then you roll up somewhere and there's no cell service. And you're like, okay, cool. So I'm having to go to a coffee shop just to work. And like, this is not what I thought this would be. And so it was a very steep learning curve. Luckily, there was lots of people out there on the internet that were experienced in these things that had already been figuring this stuff out. And it, like I said, it evolved over the 5 years we were doing it even. But it was really great, because it did make me realize that I could build a business from anywhere. And just the adventure really supported my business as well creatively, I think. And then we chose to end our journey, like even in the pandemic, we kind of stayed put in the trailer, because travel had changed Lots of people bought RVs. Things were crowded. You couldn't travel through certain states because of COVID restrictions and all this stuff. And so we were kind of like getting momentum. We got our vaccinations. We were ready to go. Like, let's get back on the road. And we started getting back on the road for a couple months. And we're like, I think we're done. And the agreement was, as long as when this is no longer fun, that's when we stop. We have to see the 50 states or some milestone like that. It was like, I think we're done. I think we're good. And we were both real done. And so, yeah, we sold the trailer and moved on and all those things. And now we're stationary, where ironically in the town that I grew up in, after traveling all these places of where to move next, we ended up where I grew up, which is pretty funny. But yeah, it was a definite learning curve.
Yeah.
But it was awesome.
First thing that came to mind as you were talking was, I love how he waited and he got you all signed on the contract before he was like, yeah, now let's travel for 5 years.
Right? Now that I've married you. Like, what?
What's happening now? So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for like dropping that bomb before we got married. I don't know. Yeah. But and I think what was cool was this feeling of, which is interesting, that even though I'm living in one place and I can get bored with that, my office can still go with me. Like, I'm like, you know what? My brain is not working. If I go to a coffee shop, the internet might be a little slower for me than my house, but it's like I get shit done because I'm there in this contained. I'm not going to sit in the coffee table spot for 2 hours if I'm not drinking 2 hours worth of coffee, right? It really gets me to focus a lot more. And then even inside of the trailer life, it was like, oh, I get to work in these beautiful spaces. So that changed me too. So I think even now I like challenge myself to pick up and go work in other places, just because it does something to my brain, I think.
I have the same experience that, I can do like work in the business work here in my apartment at my desk. But when it's time to do like the creative things, creating content or things along those lines, I really need a change of scenery. So it's the coffee shop or it's, outside, something along those lines. And I read from somebody, they talk about like the Pomodoro technique where, you work for a certain amount of time and then you take a break. And this person actually does different tasks at different locations. So he'll move throughout the day to 3 or 4 different locations. And like one location is for writing content. One location is for, writing his podcast scripts or what. So every, like, this coffee shop I do this and this coffee shop I do that. So instead of doing the Pomodoro, he's there for like an hour and then he goes to the next location, which also solves the problem.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is there's a friend that I adore who does, she does what's called design psychology. So she studied architecture design and interior design and all these things. And basically it's like place setting. And so it's creating a ritual around, like, you sit down to your work. So she designs people's office spaces too. Like it's essentially what's going to hold you the best, what's going to hold that experience the best. And so, yeah, creating these little containers. I think the challenge with that too is you go, cool, I'm going to go write a blog post and I'm going to go to this place. And then you find yourself sitting next to, this happened to me one time specifically. These 2 people were arguing about something and it was about like somebody's mother-in-law. It was like a really nasty argument. And I thought, this is weird that you're having this in a public place. It was really kind of loud and I could not focus. And I'm like, I found myself just getting so irritated. I'm like, okay, so you can't always expect necessarily what's going to happen there. But it made me realize, like, okay, this kind of task is not right for this environment where there's going to be high distraction. I can't record something if there's people ranting in the background. I can't, do something where I have to really focus on data and I'm going to lose my place and things like that. And so, I think that's the other thing, is to kind of give yourself room to flow. Like if you're going somewhere, you're like, the internet's not as good right now. My cell phone service not working well on my hotspot. Okay, what else can I do? You have to give yourself like plan Bs in those situations too.
So you and I were recently having a conversation. We were talking about your client onboarding system. And in the course of that conversation, we kind of discovered it wasn't so much like, it wasn't even the onboarding. It was like the communicating as the project was going, that maybe the problem wasn't that necessarily. but it was something completely else, something you
Yeah.
haven't given yourself permission to do, which would be more about doing business your way. So can you talk
Uh-huh.
about that revelation and what that has done for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks to you. This was a great conversation because I was thinking I needed something, right? I'm like, you're the person. I need client onboarding. This is the thing I need. And then I realized, yeah, my client onboarding was okay. That wasn't the problem necessarily. It was once they're onboarded, they're there and they're the unique people. Like they're not going to do it all the same way. And I had, thought, oh, well, I'm not going to make sure they don't have to use this project management software. They're not going to have to learn a new tool if they don't already know it. Like I'm going to be okay with that. But what would start to happen is I would encounter different learning styles, some people like text, some people like email, some people do a lot more personal growth work than other people. And so it's like much harder for them to communicate. Like they don't know what they want as well as someone who's maybe worked with a business coach for a year, who's done all kinds of personal growth work. Like they know themselves better. And so I call myself like amateur therapist because I'm in there going, wow, this is like a lot more heavy lifting, a lot more emotional labor with some people. So I was actually with a client yesterday and she was like, is everybody like this? And I said, no, everybody's not like that. But I said, everybody's not you, like don't make yourself feel wrong for this. And I'm not going to make you feel wrong for this. You just need something else. What you need is more sessions with me where we're literally back and forth looking at all the visuals together and, oh, a little more purple, a little less purple, a little, because you're having a hard time communicating in an email. And so you need to be with me. And that's okay. She's like a more hands-on, boots on the ground kind of person than some people. Literally, I never even talk to them hardly. They can just email me, and it's real clear, and we're speaking the same language. And so it was great to just kind of give her permission to say, "This is how this works. Let's just add on some sessions together, some consultation sessions, so that this is." And so I provide that now. I think it's like the noticing is providing that in the beginning. So this is kind of part of the onboarding because I thought I did it, but I really wasn't articulating it well, which was there's multiple ways we can do this process together. This is how long I think this should take, right? And these are the steps involved. There's tech pieces, there's creative pieces, there's emotional pieces to branding work, and then design work and all those things. And so I think it's just that it's like getting clear on what they need and what their style is. So really treating each client like their individual because I'm sitting there saying I'm bringing out the uniqueness in them and then I'm wanting them to do it all the same way. And that doesn't work.
Well, and because we hear the cookie cutter advice that have a package or maybe two, and you do exactly the same thing in the same way with every client. And I was just listening to a podcast from somebody today who was doing that. And she's like, it wasn't in a VIP day fashion. And she's like, it wasn't really working. And so she's like, everybody's different. So we can't apply the same solution to every single person, whether that's web design, branding, systems. So we have, if we really want to offer our clients a wonderful experience that, they can feel like that, that they're moving forward and they've been supported, they've felt seen and heard, then we have to keep in mind that they are individuals and very unique.
Yeah. And I think that's what, I start my process out. When I don't start my process out this particular way, I definitely am more challenged. But I start out with a branding course, which is essentially like this real deep dig into their personal values. I get to learn about them. I get to kind of reflect and share about my own values. Sometimes our values don't align and I have to go, okay, this is interesting. My values don't align, but yet still like this is this person's uniqueness. They don't have to, right? And doing that process first is really helpful because that gives us a baseline of who they are and what's important to them in the process and things like that. And so I've already got like an idea of who they are. And then I've had people like by the end, they're like, I didn't think you were going to like see me this way. I didn't think you were going to really like give me permission to bring some of the parts of myself forward that I thought weren't really relevant to my business. And I'm like, of course these parts are relevant because they would keep coming up as themes and conversation. I'm like, this sounds like this is really important to you. Why don't we bake this into your business in some way? And then, I've had other people, like you were saying, they have this very dogmatic, rigid way of you have to use these systems and these tools, and that helps me so that people don't push my boundaries. And I would be on some of those teams with people using those tools. Like they do project management, I'd come and I'd do design for the project. The client would use the tools, but they'd use them wrong. And that was almost more annoying than them not using them at all. We're like, oh, you didn't reply to the thread. Made a whole new post. And now we don't have the link in the thread. And it's just like, this is more exhausting than just, I don't know, get on the phone. So yeah, you have to, and I think people don't know to say, people don't like to say, I don't know how to do that. Or people don't like know, everybody wants to act like they know how to do things because we don't want to look bad. So if I say, oh, it's easy, it's this video tool that I use a tool called Loom for video feedback. Even if they don't use it and respond to it, it's still a good tool for them to watch me going through their website because it's much better than explaining in an email because I'm using a visual format on website design and branding design. Um, but yeah, if they're not comfortable replying back to that tool and making their own video, that's okay. I go, what works for you? We want to go on Zoom and do it in real time? Do you want to just screenshot it and send it to me? I'm willing to go with whatever works for people.
Well, somebody who has enrolled in that course of yours, I can attest to the fact that it is a deep dive to the point that I haven't finished it because there are some questions that are very challenging, not in a bad way, but I really need to take some time to think about this. I hadn't considered that this may be part of my brand, but when so many of us are our brand, then of course all of these things are important. And it's not just which shade of purple do I like and, do I use, X or Y? It's like, yes, values. What's your vision for your business? What's your vision for your life? Why are you choosing to do the things that you're choosing to do? All of those are important and are going to impact your branding.
Yeah, and they're tricky. I think what gets tough for some people in the branding course, even because I'm starting out with asking about you, your values, what's important to you, what you like, people have a disconnect between what is me versus my brand for my business. Where is it all the same thing? Do I have to be this, I don't know, soccer mom type person in my business? Do I have to highlight that? Or is it totally different and I can leave that behind? Yeah, if you want to, you can. Or if it's part of your brand, like if soccer mom is really your thing and you're going to lean into that, lean into that. But I think that's the deep dig part of it. Yes. Like people will go, oh, wow, I don't even know how to answer some of these questions. I'm like, that's okay. And I'll tell people if they're signing up I have the course plus a consultation. And if they're signing up for that, I'm like, that's okay. Say, I don't know. And then it's also something you can revisit later because when they're talking to me in the consultation, they might get more clear about what their answer might be, or they might go, you know what, that's something I need to go figure out with a business coach, or that's something I need to do a little more work on. And I wouldn't have known that if that question hadn't got thrown at me, right?
Well, and I do like that you don't just leave them there with it, that you have that consultation with them as they're, completing all of that. So, yeah. Bridget, let's think about you now and then you on day one of your business. What would you now tell day one, Bridget?
Oh my gosh. Really, I mean, the biggest thing is don't take it personally. Some people are horrible at giving feedback. Really, really horrible. Feedback is a difficult thing, right? And so that's even why I've baked in my business, like, here's how to give feedback, kind of, here's how like the way I communicate with them and the kind of feedback I offer them sort of gets them to mirror how they can, because people don't always know how to tell a designer something. And I had one client, wasn't that early on, it was oddly somewhere kind of late in the process, but it was sort of like out of my normal type of person I work with. And he looked at something and he goes, "This is awful." And that was it. There was no like, and it was literally what he had asked me to do. I'm looking at this thinking the quality is good. I don't understand. I literally couldn't understand what was wrong. And then I had to email him and go, could you say a little bit more about that? Like, which was really weird because I already felt bad that he said this is awful. And then it was, the font is weird. That's all it was. But he had deemed the whole thing, quote unquote, awful. And I thought, Yeah, okay. And I think that's the thing I encountered in the beginning was like really letting my ego get bruised. And so I'd have to realize, first of all, too, if I help create this with someone, once it's theirs, it's out in the world. They might not use it. They might do what they want with it. They'll change their mind. I have to not take that personally. Because again, that's just part of their uniqueness too, is wow, once I really did this and put it out there, and then I realized, oh, I don't actually want to do this business anymore. Or, oh, it's like they got themselves, they fully went in with me, and then they went, wow, I'm too scared to put myself out there this way. And I need to do a little more work on that or lay a better foundation with my business structure or something like that. So yeah, just not taking it personally.
And let's pretend that there is Bridget 5 years from now. What do you think that Bridget
Oh
would tell
gosh.
you in this moment?
It's so funny because I'm not a future planner too much. Um, I think she would say, you remember those times you were worried about your business? Like it was always okay. I think that's the other thing. It gets so easy. Like we were talking about working on your business, in your business. Um, it kind of feels like magic the way that I get clients sometimes. And there's times when it's slower and I start freaking out like I should just quit, forget it all. And then it's like it always works out because of the way I've been building my business over years. Or I'm always willing to try new things if that's not working. So I have to, I think, remind myself like, why do you spend so much time worrying? Like you could have gotten 5 years of your life without worrying. Well, this is what I'm going to tell you now. Everything turned out okay, right?
Yeah, we get stuck in the microcosm of where we're at in this moment and forget to look at the bigger picture and the trend. There's like a comic or a graphic of somebody like doing the progress and they're going up, but they're only noticing that they still have like 10 steps to go. And they're not looking at the fact that they've gone, 100 steps. And so it's like, if you look at the trends of your business, this moment in time is just a moment in time. I mean, it sucks if you need to pay bills or whatever, but also you've worked it out. You've figured it out before. So,
well, yeah. And I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, it's a constant, sometimes things aren't working. Sometimes what you've been doing for a while is not working anymore and you have to try something else. But I think even especially during the pandemic, I think I had a lot of clients getting into this like pivoting into new areas when it's like maybe you don't even have to pivot. Maybe there's just like a subtle little tweak you can make in something. And so I'm constantly looking at like, what are the subtle tweaks if this isn't working? And so I think that applying your lens to the systems, it's like, is it the system that's not working or just my way I'm communicating the system? Or is it, the way I'm communicating doesn't work, but the system's okay, or something like that. I think it's just leaning into like, what actually is off here? Like, why does this feel hard? Or why does this feel something's like wrong here? And then sometimes there's a way to lean into, I mean, I don't know, this is the midlife crisis of it all. When I turned 50 a couple years ago, I was like, oh, I can't be doing web design if I'm over 50. Like, no, but that's like for younger people and people are going to judge me. And like, people already think I'm younger when they start working with me anyway, which is funny. And I'm like, why would I lean into ageism anyway? And I think it was just, okay, well, if this is still working and I still enjoy this, let me just figure out how to build on this in ways that really work for me and hopefully not take the projects I don't want to take anymore or the kinds of work I don't want to do anymore. So leaning more for me into the consulting piece, the deep work, again, because I say I'm an amateur website therapist. Um, I'm not an amateur. I don't know what it is. I'm not an amateur in websites, but I'm an amateur therapist. That I really like taking people through those deep processes. I think that's where the real fun lies.
Yeah. Well, Bridget, where can the listeners find you?
On my website, which is bridgetbakerbranding.com, or on Instagram, I'm at Bridget Baker Branding.
All right. So everybody go check out Bridget and say hi to her on Instagram. Thanks for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Here's What I Learned. You can find the show notes and transcripts at jackiehayes.online/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to leave a review and follow the show. Be sure to find me on Instagram at JackieHayes_OBM and let me know what you learned from this episode. Catch you next time on Here's What I Learned.